Hey guys, Wes Logan here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why and when I choose to throw a jig or a Texas rig or vice versa. And it all depends on time of year, if I'm searching for bass, if I've actually found a group, when I like to throw this or when I like to flip that. So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you and hope you guys enjoy. All right guys, so we're talking about flipping a jig versus a Texas rig, and here today we're on the upper Mississippi. It's mid-August, late August, summertime, and I'm actually flipping boat docks right now, which is a good way to catch fish during the summertime because obviously the fish are going to hold to the shade, and one of the best ways to catch them is flipping. Now the approach to whether you want to flip a jig or a Texas rig, I've kind of developed my own little way I go about it, and as you can see right now I'm flipping a 3/8 ounce compact pitching jig from Dirty Jigs. It's got a Zoom super chunk on it, and that's really my go-to with a dock jig. And the reason for that being in the summertime is I feel like the bigger profile of this bait with the big chunk style, I feel like you're liable to get a little bit bigger bite. And the reason that I've come up with that is the water gets hot, the fish get kind of lazy, and if you're fishing around these boat docks where these bigger fish like to live, a big fish in hot water, like in the late summertime like we have here, is not gonna eat all day. He's gonna, or she most of the time, is gonna pick and choose her meals so she don't exert a lot of energy. So basically, instead of pitching a 3-inch Texas rig, I'm throwing this, bigger profile bait that gives you a better chance to actually catch a bigger fish in this situation. In the wintertime, I'm gonna be flipping a 5/8. That's my go-to weight on a Zoom Big Salty chunk. I feel like I've come up with a good process of doing that in the wintertime because of rate of fall. And you're not really gonna be fishing, what we're fishing here today. It's gonna be more pre-spawn stuff, staging areas, maybe a bluff bank, a channel swing bank with laydowns on it. Just something where those fish are gonna be setting up before they go into spawn. So we've broke down two situations where we'd use a jig over a Texas rig, but going into the actual spawn and when the fish are pulling up to bed and stuff like that, that's when I'm gonna make the transition to the Texas rig. For some reason, those fish key in on a soft plastic on a Texas rig when they're in that spawning mood more than a jig, because I feel like it's more of a protective deal than really a feeding situation. So I feel like you've got a better chance of getting that fish to bite and actually commit to the bait if you've got a Texas rig with just a little bit smaller profile. That's been my go-to about it from that transition from winter to spring. The Texas rig may have a Z-crawl on it, a Zoom Ultra Vibe speed crawl is a really good bait to flip in the springtime. But I would say my two favorites are the Zoom Z-crawl, sometimes the Z-crawl Junior, and then that Ultra Vibe speed crawl are just hard to beat that time of year. As you transition more into the post spawn, they're coming off bed, the shad are spawning, the bluegill are spawning, and that's when I like to pick up the jig. Again, it goes back to the bigger profile. There is certain situations if you're on a really pressured body of water on a post spawn deal that I will stick with the Texas rig just for getting bites. But once I do find an area where I get some bites, I do still keep the jig honest, because day in and day out, the jig is gonna get you a better quality bite, but you may not take near as many. And the last, seasonal time that we hadn't talked about is, from that late summer, fall transition. It gets kind of, where you're at in the country, depending on what's going on, because late fall up north and late fall in the south are two totally different things. I haven't had the opportunity to fish very much up north when you get into that late fall when the weather starts turning. But from my experience down south, those fish start moving back in those creeks. The fish are really keying on bait fish as far as shad. That's kind of what they're dialed in on. If I do flip a jig in that situation, it's a more compact deal, kind of like my dock jig, but I'll go to a black and blue maybe with some flash in it to kind of give them that flash like a shad or a small bait fish, which is what they're really keying on a lot of the times. But that's another time where you can get a Zoom Z-Crawl Junior that's black sapphire, that's black on one side, kind of neutral, and then the other side will be, have that silver flash. and you're flipping it on a Texas rig, I mean, that's kind of keying in on the profile of the bait fish that they're in the fall, and then also, you know, the color. So you're killing two birds with one stone really with that situation. The one thing we didn't go into very much is a grass situation, and I want to get into that a little bit because there's a big debate on, you know, flipping a jig in grass and flipping a Texas rig. And it's a really simple approach that I go about it depending on how the grass is set up. If you've got isolated clumps of, let's say, milfoil, you know, and you know they're in 8 to 10 foot of water, I will go to a 3/4 ounce jig, a dirty Jigs, no jack flipping jig, and I'll put a trailer on it that it's not going to be like these chunk trailers. It's going to be, I always go towards the Z-Crawl Junior because it's very streamlined. It's got little bitty pinchers, so it's giving you a little bit of action, but it helps you come in and out of that grass, you know, very easily and very efficiently. And that's a big key when flipping grass, because you could be on a huge grass flat and you've got to cover all this water, and the more you can come in and out quicker, the better your odds are. The vice versa to that, if you've got a topped out mat situation, that's when I go to the Texas rig or a punch rig, where it'll be a 3/4 ounce weight will probably be the smallest, up to a, you know, sometimes down in Florida in our southern lakes, you can get up to a 2 ounce to have to get through that stuff. So that's kind of where you can use both, but in different situations depending on how the grass is set up. So what I would take away from it from an all year standpoint is, if I want a Texas rig, I'm searching for fish, an area of fish, a group of fish, whether it be in grass, you know, on laydowns, trying to figure out what type of bank they're on. If I'm in a search mode, like starting practice for a tournament, or I've never been somewhere, I'll flip the Texas rig around. But once I locate or feel like I know how the fish are setting up or what to look for, that's when I like to, you know, just sample the jig, because if you can take a bite on a jig over a Texas rig, you know, your odds greatly increase in a tournament situation to get a bigger bite with the jig. We've come up to this dock, and I'm going to tell you what I'm kind of looking at and how I kind of break down. We've kind of got in front of it, but as we're coming up to the dock, you can see we've got a floating dock. There's going to be a pole up front and a pole in the back. You've got a boat lift in it, so there's a bunch of places where these fish could set up. And a lot of times on a floating dock, a fish is going to be suspended. He's not going to be on the bottom. He's probably going to be up against the float, or, you know, just a few feet down. So with that in mind, you know, like I said, I approach this dock. There's a shade line right there. I'm going to pitch out there, let it sink to the bottom. We're in about 5 or 6 feet. You know, it gets to the bottom, and I'm just going to hop it 1 or 2 times. 90% of the time on a floating dock deal, the fish is going to get it on the fall, because like I said, he's not going to be sitting on the bottom. He's going to be sitting, you know, 2 or 3 feet down. He sees it fall, and he's going to run over and get it. Now, there is instances where he'll follow it to the bottom, and that's why I kind of like to give it a little, you know, a few hops on the bottom. If he's down there looking at it, may, you know, trigger him to strike. Hop it up a few times. And one of the key things that I like to do that I don't tell a lot of people, or it's not really known, you flip out there, it goes to the bottom, you hop it a little bit, and then I kind of like to swim it out away if I'm flipping, you know, really a pole dock or a floating dock, because sometimes there'll be a fish sitting out, not necessarily under the dock. He may have chased something out, or he's just, you know, happen to be swimming up to it, and you swim your jig out kind of slow, and he might react to it, and you get an extra bite here and there, instead of just reeling out there, letting it go to the bottom. Hop it a few times and just burning it in. You know, just keeping your bait in a strike zone just a little bit longer may get you an extra bite or two, which sometimes that's all it takes in a tournament. So you'll see me, I'll work it a little bit as it gets out, gets closer to the boat, and then obviously as it, you know, it's real close, I'll just go ahead and bring it in and get right back out there. But like I said, we've made our way around the dock, and this is the only 2 poles that are going to be on the dock, which is, you know, it's probably your most high percentage area of the dock is the pole, just because he's got something to sit on up and down. A bass does like to always try and be on something, but like I said, with them floats sitting down on this floating dock, he feels like he's, you know, close enough to something that he can suspend on it and be, you know, still be hidden and be able to eat and stuff like that. All right, guys, I'm gonna go into a little bit on why I choose the dock jig that I use. This is a Dirty Jigs compact pitching jig, and the main thing you're gonna notice about this is the strands of the skirt. They're a lot thinner than a lot of jigs on the market. I feel like that gives it a different fall. This skirt material, you know, it moves a little bit different in the water, a lot different than, you know, most jigs on the market. So that's one of the key features that I like about it. The head design, It makes it really good for skipping. It's kind of flat on the bottom, but it's rounded on the top. We'll get to that in a second, but the flatness on the bottom kind of lets it skip like a rock, which you're not always pitching docks. You know, if you get a real big dock or you want to get real back in some shady areas, you're going to be able to skip that bait really well. As you come up to the hook eye, you know, it kind of rolls, and we've got a flat horizontal eye. And what that lets it be able to do is if you ever hit a cross member or something under a wooden dock, it's just going to let that really just basically roll over instead of rolling side to side that you would get with a vertical jig tie. It's got a very strong Gamakatsu hook, got a really good keeper on the back. I like to thread, a Zoom super chunk back up on it. Even if you want to go to a cross style, if that's what you have confidence in, it's going to be able to hold that bait really well when you're bouncing it around, hitting dock posts, skipping it way back up under there. So, that's kind of the whole breakdown of the jig. The two sizes I use most of the time are a 3/8 and a 1/2. That's kind of, just, kind of a basic. If you're on a deeper dock, use the 1/2. If you're on a shallower deal, use the 3/8. Most of the time I'm going natural colors. This is a Magic Crawl Swirl, natural color with a little bit of blue hint to it. And most of the time on docks, I don't tend to go towards the, the real black and blue deal unless you're in a dirty water situation, and then you just have that contrast to let that fish be able to see it. If you're specifically targeting boat docks, you're going to want a little bit shorter rod than you would normally flipping. Anything from a 7.2 to a 7.4. Some guys like a 7 foot. There's nothing really wrong with that. I like a 7.4. I'm not the tallest guy there is, so I feel like when I set the hook, I need to have as much leverage as I can get away with still having a short enough rod to be able to, work around these docks and get in places that are hard to reach. I use a heavy, but the heavy that I use has a good parabolic bend to it. The tip comes down the rod, 18 to 20 inches. The rod I use is an arc reinforcer. It's a 7.4 heavy, but like I said, it's a fast action, and the tip comes down, 18 to 20 inches, which allows me to work that bait good, not rip it out of the fish's mouth, get a good hook set, but still not to that broomstick where you're just gonna, there's absolutely no give at all in the rod. I like to throw, 18 to 22 pound, depending on really what kind of docks I'm around, what size jig that I'm flipping, or if I'm around, a lot of 2 and 3 pounders, or if you're somewhere like on Lake Fork or something and you've got the chance to catch, a 10 or 12 pounder on one of these boat docks. The reason I like the shooter is it's a smaller diameter than a lot of, it's that in between, 15 to 20. So it's that good happy medium. I feel like it doesn't overpower the bait near as much. It's just a good all-around line. It's very abrasion resistant if you get around, some of these metal posts and wooden posts, stuff like that. It's just been a really good line for me. If I were to be in a situation where I'm going to be flipping the, the 1/2 ounce and I'm around some really big fish or something, I might bump up to the 20, even the 22 a lot of times. Going to the reels, in this day and time, we have such high gear ratio reels that they're really good for flipping situations. It has nothing to do with the casting or anything like that. It's more about being more efficient, about being able to bring your bait back and get it back into another place faster without having to wear you out. If you've got a 5 gear ratio or a 6 gear ratio reel that you're flipping with, you're gonna have to turn that reel handle, 8 to 10 more times to get your bait in every single cast for 8 hours. I mean, it's just gonna make you tireder, wear your hands out, wear your arms out, to where by the end of the tournament day, you'll be wore out when you've got 30 minutes left in the day and you need to be on, the top of your game. For that reason, I use a 7.5 to 1 gear ratio, plenty fast to get that bait in, get it back out, and be a lot more efficient, cover a lot more water. The exact reel that I use is the Team Lose Pro TI. It brings in, 30 to 32 inches per turn, not near a 5, which is, way on down the spectrum. Whatever reel you want to use, the gear ratio, you need to have it anywhere from that 7 to 8 to 9. If you're comfortable with a 9, fish a 9. If you're comfortable with a 7, fish a 7, but I would not go lower than a 7 to gear ratio in any kind of flipping situation. So I hope all this helps, and, this is a great way to cover a lot of water and get a big bite if you're in a tournament situation, or if you're trying to catch the biggest fish in the lake, you're liable to do that on a jig around a boat dock. All right, guys, so now we've got a Texas rig out, and as you can see, we're flipping these, we've got some isolated clumps of grass, a little bit of matted up stuff, some wood mixed in between. This is where I kind of get away from the jig when you get around to the grass situation. And I'll kind of just pitch around, all these isolated patches, they could all hold a fish. And I mean, we've got little bait fish, flicking around on all the edges of the clumps. So it's a good place for these fish to set up. with this Texas rig, you just go in there and you come out, and I mean, you just move on to the next one. I'm using a 1/2 ounce right now, but just depending on the cover, how thick the mat is, if you just need to be able to get through it and get back out as, you know, as simple as and quickly as possible. You know, my favorite bait, I wouldn't say my favorite bait, the best bite getting bait that I've found here lately is the Zoom Z-Crawl Jr. We've got a big area here where a lot of fish could be, but you know, the fish don't live everywhere in the lake, so I feel like if you've got a bait that you've got confident you can get a bite in, you know, that's the bait you need to keep in your hand until you get an area dialed in, you know, stuff like that. So that's why I choose this bait. It's a confidence deal, it's my bite getter. And then once I figure out kind of, you know, if they want this or if they want that, I might change up colors, might change up size, but I'm still gonna stick to this, you know, the Z-Crawl Jr. action. But basically I've come up to a clump, you know, I pitch out there, it sinks down, you know, I'll lift it up a little bit. Anytime I'm flipping grass, I'm always paying attention to my line. So you'll flip out there and your line will be falling. A lot of times you'll actually see the line jump. And when you pick up, if the line jumps, you pick up, a lot of times the fish will be moved to one side or the other. And a lot of times that's because the fish is sitting there aggressive, he's ready to eat. So you get it down there and you drop it on his nose, you know, he jumps on it and he gets out of there pretty quick. Every now and then, if they're a little bit more lethargic, you know, you'll pitch out there and it'll sink down to the bottom, or you'll think it sank down to the bottom and the line just stops and you'll pick up and it'll just be like it's welded there. And I mean, it kind of gives you a, you know, a mood, how the fish are in the mood or how they're setting up at that certain time. And that kind of helps me know if I need to, you know, really work a clump, if I've got a little bit bigger clump, if I need to, you know, hit every 6 inches of it, or if I flip in a clump this size and I flip a little bit to the left side of it and one bites it like and runs out real fast with it, well, now I know that I can just get it in the clump somewhere and he's more than likely gonna get it. But if I flip to a clump that same size and flip to the right and don't get a bite, and I happen to flip to the left and he bites it, now I know I need to slow down and pick it apart a little bit because I've got to put it right on him because he's not near as aggressive, and you're trying to get him to react to it at that point. But like I said, you just pitch it out there, you know, I'll let it go to the bottom. You don't see your line doing anything, just kind of give it a few little shakes on the bottom, and then I'll hop it 1 or 2 times as I bring it out, and then you bring it out and go to the next one. All right guys, gonna give you a breakdown of my setup for flipping a Texas rig. And this is more of a lightweight Texas rig, not really a punching setup, kind of isolated grass, isolated wood, anything like that. Kind of up to a 1/2 ounce, probably wouldn't go any higher than that with this setup that I'm gonna be telling you about. But starting off with the bait, the bait we have here is a Zoom Z-Crawl Jr. You know, it's just a bite getter. I've said it 100 times, you know, it's a confidence bait for me. Here we have the blueberry color, it's just black with some blue flake in it. I have rigged up with an arc tungsten weight, 1/2 ounce, arc bobber stop. You know, you want to have that pegged. I peg my weight on my baits, you know, 99% of the time. There's very few times where I'm not pegging it, so that bobber stopper is very key. The hook I've got is the new Gamakatsu G-Power tournament grade flipping hook. This is a 3/0. You know, that 3/0 size fits real well in this Z-Crawl Jr. You know, it gets right to the bottom of the bait, lets the bait sit really, you know, horizontal, gives it a real natural look. Really impressed with this hook, really excited about it. It's got a really good keeper on it. Moving over to the rod, you know, it's the same rod that I use for fishing my docks with the dock jig. And I feel like the action of this rod is good for a multiple of things. Like I said, it's got that tip, you know, it's got the bend in it, parabolic bend down to about 18 to 20 inches, but then you've got the backbone to be able to, if you are flipping these isolated clumps of grass, you've got the backbone to be able to get that fish out and drive that hook set home into that fish's mouth. Reel is the same reel. It's a Lew's Pro TI 7.5-to-1. Again, like that gear ratio, picking up the line, the high-speed gear ratio, you're going to be able to get in and get out in places very efficient. Line right now, I've got it on 20-pound shooter, and just for that simple fact that we're around a little bit more gnarly stuff. Instead of just flipping isolated wood, you know, we're actually in some grass and the wood is actually very gnarly. So beefed it up a little bit with the line on the 20-pound. And I mean, this is my setup I have confidence in, and it's worked for me, and hopefully it'll work for you. All right guys, we just finished shooting a video of the difference in when I choose a jig over a Texas rig when I'm flipping. We're doing a gear giveaway for Gamakatsu, Sunline, and AFCO. So be sure and get in on that, and good luck to you guys, and we'll see you guys on the water.